Thank you, Mike. Well, tonight we are going to start the evening off with Scott Coleman. He is running for Collin County Commission Place 2. So he's been out in the public for a while, and I'm just, I appreciate the work that you're doing and give you an opportunity to introduce yourself tonight.
County Commissioner, thank you. Thank you so much, Jenny. So, Jenny, you run, thank you.
In the public for a while, and I'm just, I appreciate the work that you're doing and
Who is that?
introduce yourself tonight.
If I speak loud enough, maybe we just won't even hear it. Should I just speak loud enough and we won't even hear it? Okay. Thank you, Jenny, so much for your introduction. Jenny, you run the RAD, Richardson Dems. You have a book club. You're a business owner. You're solving world hunger. No, just kidding. You're amazing. Thank you, Jenny, so much. And it's great to see Kendall and Joe Jaworski. Thank you for being here again. You really love North Texas, man. You've been here so many times. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for coming. You really love North Texas. I've got this running joke where I asked Joe one time if I could steal his material, if I could steal his speech, and he said yes. It was in Dallas, and he gave this really good speech where he really connects to people. He really connects to voters on issues that really matter to people, the issues that are really going to be important next year. And he just happened to be getting off stage, and I was the first person who he got off stage with, and I said, "Man, Joe, that was a great speech. Good job. I want to steal some." So, and I said, "Can I take some of that?" And he said, "Yes." And I realized that Joe's not just a good candidate, but he's also a really nice guy to just let me steal some of the material. Fast forward 2 months from then, and we were in Richardson again, and I thought, well, I'm speaking before him. What if I just did it again and just stole his material right before he spoke? And I did that. And he didn't care again. He was fine with him. This time I'm not gonna just steal his material like that. I'm gonna have a theme that's related to it. And my theme is really, really simple for 2022, y'all, in Richardson. My theme is we need good government again. We need state and local governments that work for us. State and local governments that work for everybody, right? I know we're all Democrats in here, so I know you're expecting me to have this convoluted story about that. But that's it, guys. That's it. That's it for the Democrats. We need state and local government that work for us. We need an attorney general. We need an attorney general who hasn't been indicted on 2 felonies, right? Did you ever think you'd hear somebody say that? I didn't think I'd ever hear somebody say that. We need a state government that doesn't divide everybody against each other like what's happening in our schools. Dividing parents against ISDs and teachers against principals and everybody against each other, dividing everybody up. And we need a governor who's going to keep the lights on. Like Beto, who just lights up every room, doesn't he? Beto lights up every room. Now, y'all in Richardson, y'all are one city, but y'all are located in 2 counties, right? Y'all are in Dallas and y'all are in Collin. And y'all are making this work somewhat. Depends on the county, right? How many of y'all are in Dallas County? How many of y'all are in Collin County? Is there a difference? Is there a difference? If you're not, a lot of people are from Dallas, let me give you the 30-second Collin story. I'm going to use some nice words here because looks like a nice crowd. The Collin County government is narcissistic and dysfunctional. Those are the nice words. If you want the mean words, I'll text you them later, but those are the nice words, okay? And the Collin County judge, Chris Hill, you guys know this guy, Chris Hill? He spent the summer, at one point, he decided he wanted to fight his own county clerk. And so he went into the administration building. He was so mad at her about COVID that he went into the administration building. You guys remember this? And he got her records of like when she clocked into the building. You know, our key cards that get us into the buildings. And he got a report for when she did that. And first of all, she's an elected official, so he's not her boss or anything. And so he had no reason to do that. And then second of all, you know, she gave everybody a reason why she was home. She was home for the same reason we were all home in June and January. A lot of us were home because of COVID. You guys remember when some of us stayed home from COVID? So she was staying home for COVID, and that made Chris Hill so mad that he had to go and attack her. And I guess at that moment, he just felt very paternalistic and had to attack her. So it's a mess. And then in August, when they were going over the budget, just like all the counties go over the budget, they just ended up fighting each other for 45 minutes. This was in the news, and you can go and watch it. It's just totally dysfunctional, right? Now, what about here in Dallas County? I mean, it's work. I mean, does that sound like something Clay Jenkins would do? I mean, I guess we could be fair and ask him, right? Like we could say, Clay Jenkins, have you ever done a political hit job against your county clerk and, you know, tried to get her time cards? But no, right? So this is 2 counties in Richardson that you guys are straddled on. And you guys have made it work. Are you guys happy you elected Arifin and Joe to the city council, right? These are some city councilmen who you know, they're pretty normal. They're trying to do a good job for people, right? And that's what we need. Now, let's talk about these maps. Let me close with these maps. You guys, everybody's seen these maps, right? Have we all seen these maps? They're just tearing everybody apart. Dallas, have you guys seen the maps of Dallas? They're ripping up Dallas. Is anybody in here from Plano? Anybody here from Allen? They're ripping up Allen and Plano. I'm from Wiley. They're ripping up Wiley. Some of y'all didn't know there was a Wiley, right? They're ripping up Wiley too. So let me ask you this, Richardson. So Richardson, y'all been split up into 2 counties for forever, right? Are y'all scared of these Republicans? Y'all really scared? Having elected these city councilmen, having found the formula that wins, are y'all shaking in y'all's boots? No. Y'all are ready, right? We need you, Richardson. We need you so bad. We need you, Richardson. We need your model for how to win in this county and in every county and every single election. We need y'all. We need y'all so bad, Richardson. Are y'all ready to fight this next year to win this election? Are y'all ready? All right. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate y'all having me today. I hope to talk to y'all again soon. See y'all soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. A couple other people snuck in while we were having the beginning. Dana Huffman has gotten here. Dana, tell them what you're running for. It's long. There you go. Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. And, oh, hi. I'm good. Yes, Jonathan Cox came in. Thank you for coming. And I think I saw Tom Irvin come in. Yes. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you all for coming. Tonight, I am also happy to introduce Kendall Scudder. He is running for HD Texas House District 114. And I'm glad you're here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jenny, for having me. I know what you're thinking. Why is someone that's running for House District 114 talking to the Richardson area Democrats? Great question. House District 114 is East Dallas. But here's a fun fact. My district has 3 precincts in Richardson ISD. And I was raised to never walk away from a fight worth having. I believe that our public schools are the fight worth having. So whether you are in the smallest precinct in my district or the biggest precinct in my district, we're going to work and fight for every single vote we can on the ballot. And that's why I'm here to talk to y'all today. You may remember me as being the Democrat who was nominated to run against Bob Hall for the state Senate back in 2018. Or you may remember me as the guy who filed the criminal complaint against Ken Paxton for trying to take away your right to vote during a pandemic. You may know me as a member of the State Democratic Executive Committee or as being a guy who started over 50 young Democrat chapters around the state of Texas. But wherever we've met along the way, it's because we've all been in the trenches doing hard work for a really long time. And we do it for something bigger than just politics. I got my first job when I was 7 years old. I was picking peas on a purple hull pea farm. And every morning I'd wake up before I'd go to school and I'd pick peas in these big white 5-gallon buckets. I'd stick them up on the porch and take the school bus to school and get off the school bus the next day and come back and shell them. And that was just a part of what we did in East Texas. A couple years of doing that, and that little boy with farm calloused hands was kicked out of Bible study and asked not to come back to Boy Scouts because folks in town found out that my mamas were lesbians and parents didn't want their kids around. A couple years after that, my stepmother, who was a paramedic, a first responder serving the community, was driving an ambulance with a patient in the back, and she got hit by a drunk driver and broke both of her legs. She was in ICU. We didn't know she was going to make it. Our family wasn't allowed in the ICU room, and if she had died, we would have lost our home. A couple years later, I'm 11 years old. I'm sitting on the couch watching the news with my moms. And there's a Republican state legislator who's talking about how important it is that we take kids with same-sex parents out of their homes and put them in foster care. That was the reality of what our family existed in. A mom who was constantly worried about a government trying to take her kids away. And I turned and looked at my mom and I asked her why that guy hated us so much. And her answer was, he hates us because he doesn't know us. And we're going to work hard to be nice to everybody we can because it's hard to hate up close. And that's real sweet of her to say, but I still didn't like the guy. And so the next day, she dropped me off at a Democratic headquarters in Hopkins County, Texas. And for the last 20 years, there isn't a day that I've gone to sleep without thinking and working to try to get Democrats elected in every square inch of the state. I went to Sam Houston State University as a first-generation traditional college student. I became an affordable housing professional. I moved back to Dallas. And after Donald Trump won that election in 2016, I knew that we all had to do just a little bit more than what we were already doing. So I stepped up to run in the most conservative Senate district in the state of Texas, where we knocked on 70,000 doors. We overperformed 20 points. I beat Beto in my district. We may not have won. We may not have been able to win, but I argued for women's reproductive health down the barrel of shotguns in East Texas. And I never back down from what our progressive values are because I think they're worth fighting for. Now, here we are again. They've just redrawn these districts. And East Dallas and parts of Richardson ISD now have what people are calling a safe Democratic district. And I think that the kind of Democrat that we send to those districts is really important. And I think that you know from the work we've all done together and from the conversation we're having now that I will fight every day to make sure that no one is denied the basic human dignity that was denied to my family. And I think that's a core tenet of who we are as Democrats and why we get up and fight every day. So beyond that, 70% of what the state legislature does is public schools. That's what our budget is. And I'll have to tell you, one of the first things I want to do is a constitutional amendment to ban school vouchers because I think that they are a thinly veiled attempt to privatize our public schools and tear them apart brick by brick. I want to fight to make sure we get a permanent cost of living adjustment in place for our retired teachers. I want to fight to make sure we're rolling back these Republican attacks on women's autonomy, and I will fight every day to defend your voting right. You know I'll do it because you've seen me do it. This race is about sending a certain kind of Democrat, one that's not going to just be an elected official in a safe seat and sit on their money and use it for themselves and their own advancement, but an organizer who's going to work these safe districts to make sure we're running our numbers up and that we can flip the state. A team player who's been in the trenches with all of us. And that's why I'm asking you for your support, because I've been doing this work with you for 20 years. And if we can do everything that we've done, with the odds stacked against us every step of the way, imagine what we all could do together in the Texas legislature. So over the next few weeks, I hope I have the opportunity to earn your support. There are a lot of different ways you can do that, and I think you know what all of them are, but I'll run some of them out for you. Help us on social media, always accepting checks to the campaign. Here's a fun fact. In Texas, there are no caps on political contributions. It's entirely unacceptable. If you wanted to write me a check for $100,000 today, you could do it. And please do. But understand that I'm going to go to Austin and fight to make sure you can't do that anymore. And you can also sign up to volunteer and help our campaign. I think that we all understand, if you've been following the news with what's happening in Richardson ISD, you know that we need more fierce advocates for public schools representing Richardson ISD. And you can always count on me to step up to the plate and fight for those fights that are so important to all of us. So I hope I can count on your support. I really appreciate all the work that y'all been doing here in Richardson. And over the next couple of weeks, I hope I have an opportunity to earn your support. Thanks, guys.
Wow. Now, I've known Kendall for a couple of years, and I've just never heard all that. I'm very impressed. Thank you for coming here tonight. We have got the distinct honor and pleasure, really, it's a pleasure, to have Joe Jaworski here tonight. It's been about a year ago, if I'm not mistaken, that he was on a Zoom call in Collin County, and I think it was November of 2020. And that's when I met him the first time, and I just was like, oh, wow, we got a good one here. So I have been supporting Joe ever since that time. So I invite all of you to also choose someone and support them. And Joe's going to have an opportunity tonight to introduce himself to you and try and earn your support.
Oh boy. All right, Richardson, you have the most attractive logo of any group that we've been with, okay? I love it. What a location. John, are you here? I mean, well done, sir. I mean, and we did a little interview out here about 30 minutes ago before the meeting started in the cold. I didn't bring a sweater, but I seem to have passed the audition, I think. But tonight, I'm in front of some very important Democrats in North Texas, and I'm here to earn your vote. I'm just going to tell you straight up. I'm here to introduce myself and ask you for your vote. But let's go back in time, about 30 years. How many lawyers and judges do we have here? We got a few, don't we? Yes. Okay. Well, you'll have my back, won't you, when I say the following? Third year of law school is a lot easier than the first. And we know this because it takes 3 years to graduate from law school so that you can then enter the profession after passing the bar exam. Well, my third year of law school was 30 years ago. And it's important because I'm running to be the top public lawyer in the state of Texas. And I think being a member of the State Bar of Texas, licensed by the Supreme Court with 30 years of experience, ought to be the first thing on your mind. Trial work, appellate work, federal and state court, and really the last 10 years as a full-time mediator. I mean, 5-day-a-week mediator. That's where people bring these intractable conflicts, and then I positively bring them to a middle ground, and we sign a deal. Sounds like something we could use in the political realm in Texas, don't you think? But going back 30 years, I have this great memory of May 1991, and I was just married. I met my wife at University of Texas School of Law. Can you believe it? Her name's Hughes. She's from Dallas, and I'm Jaworski. And at University of Texas, just like 5th grade, they had the lockers alphabetically. And so I met her just by getting my books our first year of law school. And so by the second year, we were married, and by third, we were living in wedded bliss on 3802 Duval in a beautiful little duplex that cost $450 a month. I wonder what it costs now. Maybe I can live there when I'm the Attorney General. But anyway, I said it was like mid-May 1991. I said, look, we got time. I mean, you know, we're almost done with all the classes. A couple of exams left to go. I'm going to the grocery store on a Wednesday at 11:30 in mid-May 1991. So I walked up Duval from 38th to 43rd, you know, where Mother's used to be, because I know they've closed, that wonderful vegetarian cafe. And I walked into the Fresh Plus grocery store. And you know how they always have the produce as the first station in the grocery store? Well, there I was examining the lettuces and the bell peppers. And right next to me, shopping in this same area, there she was. Governor Ann Richards. Yeah, you got it. You got it. And I just became complete fanboy. I just said, oh my God, I've got to introduce myself. Governor, I'm Joe Jaworski. I'm a law student. Look, what I would not give for a court reporter transcript of that conversation. I'd love to read it right now because we talked for about 10 minutes. I kid you not. Middle of this woman's workday, and she just made time for me. The great governor of the state of Texas. I don't have a transcript, and I regret that. No one was there to transcribe it. But who? Maya Angelou said, I remember now, she said, you may not remember what someone said to you long ago, but you'll remember how they made you feel. And such is the case with the great governor of the state of Texas, Ann Richards. I don't have the transcript, but I remember to this minute how she made me feel. She made me feel respected. She made me feel understood. Above all, she made me, this law student, feel validated because she cared to spend 10 minutes with me and hear me out. Well, the future was so bright in May 1991. There I was, about to graduate law school. I would be licensed later in the fall. God willing, I did pass the bar exam. We had a cool governor. We had a progressive government. In May 1991, the future was so bright. And here we are now, thinking how reasonable George W. Bush is on immigration. I got to ask, Texas, what happened? Texas, how far we've fallen. Look, Richardson, I think it's important that we squarely face and state plainly where we are. And it's this. You can't trust the Texas GOP to lead this state any longer. I'm not exaggerating when I say people are dying. Yeah, that's right. People are dying in the energy capital of the world. The lights turned off last February, and people froze in the cold. People died of carbon monoxide poisoning. The election judge in my precinct in Galveston, Texas, his wife died in his arms on the first night. Those Galveston homes are not meant to be unwarmed in such a freeze. That cost him his wife. He's a Marine. In America, he deserved better. You know, people are dying as well due to the negligent mismanagement of a pandemic. Governor, you started off great. You used the disaster powers, and then it wasn't 2 months later that the business interests got to you. Do we wear the masks or not? Do we get the shot or not? You're abusing the Disaster Act. And people died. I mean, we're coming out of the tunnel now. There is a light. But you know how many people died in this state unnecessarily. It's a tragedy. And more people will die due to Senate Bill 8, the atrociously entitled Heartbeat Bill. Because no longer will Texas women be able to reliably receive reproductive health when they need it the most from a licensed Texas physician. Even worse, and you all know this, there is a bounty hunter now appointed to enforce our new law. I mean, the government said, it's not us. Don't sue us. We didn't have anything to do with it. It's anybody who wants to line up to sue the aider and abetter. Could be the Uber driver, could be the partner, could be the doctor, could be the company that manufactures the equipment the doctor uses to perform routine reproductive health care. It's outrageous. But I don't mean to minimize what I just said to you because it is a codification on the war on a woman. But even worse, did you know, lawyers, judges, that the Civil Practice Remedies Code was amended by this law, the Heartbeat Bill. And in it, it turns centuries of common law understanding of zealous representation on its head. Did you know that this same law has in it a provision that says if you dare hire a lawyer to defend yourself, aiders and abettors, and that lawyer does the bare minimum, which is to file a general denial in court and assert the unconstitutionality via affirmative defense in your initial pleading, this is unconstitutional under Roe v. Wade, did you know that that automatically means the attorney who filed that pleading is jointly and severally liable for all the damages his client may experience? I kid you not. It's in black and white. The lawyer is now, by operation of law, in conflict with the client. Read it. Civil Practice and Remedies Code. So it goes like this as you approach the judge. Listen, it's getting kind of hot in here. Maybe we ought to settle. Can you imagine your lawyer turning on you like that? Well, the law encourages it. Thank you, Governor Abbott. Thank you, Ken Paxton, for giving him the legal advice to do that. It's outrageous. You want to do something about it, don't you? Well, that's what the vote's all about. But wait, Senate Bill 1 makes it harder for you to vote. It makes it harder for you to help someone to vote. Man, it would sure be good if there was a people's lawyer here to help. Well, Richardson, I got news for you. Your attorney has arrived. All right, now let me tell you some good news. Let me tell you some good news. We're going to win this race. And let me tell you how. Texas will elect the first Democratic Attorney General since 1998, and here's how it's going down. First off, I want to acknowledge Lee Merritt. I want to acknowledge Rochelle Garza, my colleagues in democracy. I refuse to call them my opponents because they're not. We Democrats know how to have a primary, and let me tell you, it's been a while since there has been a contested primary. I'm not being cute when I say it's an embarrassment of riches. It shows we're back. It shows we're strong. Welcome to the party. Now, in contrast, let's look at the other guys. What I like to refer to as a masterpiece of shame. The Texas GOP Attorney General primary. Yeah, that's right. Ken Paxton's unprecedented level of criminality has drawn 3 and maybe 4 opponents, all office holders. Unprecedented. I mean, this guy, Paxton, is seeking a 3rd term. He's never lost an election in his political life. State House, briefly state Senate before he saw something better and went for Attorney General. Hadn't ever lost. Well, how long has it been, neighbor, since you've had an Attorney General who's not under indictment? Well, that's too long. I mean, you can see the ad, right? So what I'm going to hear today is Texas Attorney General is exhibiting unprecedented levels of criminality. So he has 3 and maybe 4 office holders, not just like Allen West or someone like that. I mean, you've got George P. Bush, recently resigned to run Eva Guzman. Look, I still consider her book of business, office holder material. I mean, she's got a constituency. Matt Krause, who's from up here, right, head of the Freedom Caucus. And now Louis Gohmert, is prowling around trying to decide whether to run for Congress. Well, he'll have to tell us in the next 3 weeks. That's unheard of. And so Ken Paxton has a problem. And what I draw from this, and this is why we're going to win this race. First off, we Democrats are angry about what's happening. You can't trust the GOP, which is why, thank you, Beto O'Rourke, for Powered by People. Thank you for running for governor. I mean, there is a blue wave. And I'm going to be real conservative here because I don't want to get all pie in the sky. But let's just say the blue wave is worth, 48 points. Better than last time, or maybe slightly more. I contend that in the Attorney General's race, and I'm just trying to keep it real, okay, we're going to get every Democrat we can register and turn out voting for Joe Jaworski. But wait, there's more. Every moderate Republican, let's just leave it at Bush and Guzman, who turned out to vote against Paxton in their primary, but were sorely disappointed when Trump's endorsement and the power of incumbency got Paxton his nomination. But in November, when it's time to vote again, and they say, Abbott, okay, Patrick, yeah, whatever. But third one, oh, Paxton, I'm not voting for you. Oh, no, I don't forgive and forget so easily. I voted for Bush. I voted for Guzman. I'm not voting for you. and they skip that race. That's good for us. That means his power is being diluted. Or better yet, these self-same moderate Republicans might say, huh, Joe Jaworski, well, you know, his family has been in Texas for a while, and his grandfather, Leon Jaworski, I'm going to vote for him. He's the lesser of two evils. I see a T-shirt in my future, right? No, I'm kidding. But I'm serious. I mean, this is really electoral math, and it's how people think when they vote. So is that worth 2 or 3 points? Yes, I think it is. And God bless Justin Nelson, who ran last time, who got 47%. We can do better than that this time. Ken Paxton didn't have a opposed primary last time. I think that makes a big difference. Now, I want to be mindful of the time, but I'm not finished. There's something I must share with you. It's all good and well to have this plan, Joe, but what do you stand for, man? So, can I share with you my platform? Okay. I think it's important to have a good general election message. I think it's vitally important that it be the same message in a primary, all right? I'm sounding like Popeye. I am who I am, but I'm serious. I want you guys to know you get Joe Jaworski in the primary, you get him in the general. It's not going to be one of these chameleons. And I think it's best, so that we record this in our mind right now, that it be in a series of pledges. So here goes. Number 1, as your Texas Attorney General, I will never embarrass you in the United States Supreme Court. It's kind of amazing we have to say that, but I think we do. All right, here's number 2. And it's best to be unequivocal about this one. As your Texas Attorney General, I will support the Affordable Care Act, period, end of story. Well, it turns out people like health insurance that not only covers what you're going to be sick with, but what you're sick with on the day you pay your first premium. It makes sense, right? You get what you pay for. And it's amazing that it was not that long ago that there was something called the pre-existing condition exclusion. Well, I'm sorry, you're sick with that. We can't cover it. Well, I know, that's why I need insurance. Sorry. Well, thank you, President Obama. Thank you, Congress, for fixing that. It's also important that we have a Medicaid match, and that is something that is anticipated by the Affordable Care Act. And you've heard this from a number of candidates, and I endorse it as well. That money can go a long way to sustaining rural hospitals. Because let me tell you something. We pay our taxes liberally and generously and devotedly every year in April because it's a constitutional amendment and it's the American law. And I want you to have this image of our dollars with the little wings. I think there's actually an emoji on the phone or a little icon that's coming back to Texas like so many birds for the winter. And when they get to the Red River, there's Greg Abbott with a shotgun, or maybe he's, doing the Heisman, saying, no, you can't come in. We don't want that money back here. Go somewhere else. And it goes somewhere else, New York, Minnesota, California, because Greg Abbott, Dan Patrick, and their consigliere, Mr. Paxton, have this fetish, this obsession against federal tyranny. And somehow this money, our money, trying to work its way back over Oklahoma, is trying to come and serve our people. It's our money, Governor. Thank you so much for causing us to pay for it twice, because you do know that when less fortunate souls get ill and they go to the hospital, our decent society does not turn them away from the emergency room. But once the doctor knows you're not going to die, you're out of here. But those bills rack up to the tens of billions of dollars. And you know who pays for it in county and rural hospitals? The property taxpayer. Man, I love talking about this in rural red Texas because they start nodding their heads. And I'm like, why are you letting them do this to you? It costs us twice. So here's the bottom line. As your Texas Attorney General, on day 1, should there be any lingering litigation left over from the Paxton or even Abbott administration against the Affordable Care Act, it shall be dismissed before lunch. Two more. I know something as a former mayor that the Texas GOP has forgotten. It's a conservative principle. It's ours now. It's always been ours, I guess. Local government is the best government. It's the best government because it's the most responsive government. I mean, I'm serious. You can have coffee with your mayor. We did when I was mayor. Sounds corny, but we called it a cup of Joe with Joe. Seriously, I had some money left over from my campaign account, and I always love to get a shout out to my favorite hipster coffee spot in Galveston. You've got to go there when you're there next. Mod Coffee House. Thank you, Holly Hopkins, for being such a supporter always. Well, anyway, she'd bring the coffee, and we had the city council meeting twice a month at 10 a.m. I would meet whoever wanted to show up at 8 a.m., and we'd have coffee with the mayor, cup of Joe with Joe. At its height, we had this many people, and it wasn't a big room either. We'd have 60 people, just like here, drinking coffee, getting it off their chest, no agenda, no rules, just behave. And we'd get it done. It bred confidence, transparency, and people were optimistic about things in Galveston. Because, you know, we had just had this horrible hurricane, and we were coming back together. Well, you just try to have a cup of coffee with Greg Abbott, and let me know how that turns out. No, I got a better idea. Let's go to Ken Paxton's office and test his open door policy. Well, it doesn't exist because he's embattled. I mean, if he went out in public, he'd be hooted down by God knows who. But no, you can go see Dan Patrick. I'm not sure you want to, but if you did, you'd have to bring a $25,000 check. Look, I'm being a little facetious, but to be fair, these gentlemen have to deal with 30 million Texans, and mayors and county judges have less. All the more reason, then, to insist that they lift their authoritarian thumb off the scale and let local government persist. I say let Dallas be Dallas, let Richardson be Richardson, let Abilene be Abilene, let Brownsville be Brownsville. It's called federalism. So here's my pledge here. As your Texas Attorney General, in my Attorney General opinion section, it's a big deal. I'll call balls and strikes just like you want me to on unsettled questions of law. If it's constitutional, I'll say so. If it's unconstitutional, I'll say so. But let me clearly state my bias on matters of interpretation where it could go either way regarding local decision-making authority. Let it breathe. Let cities be themselves. Do you have time for one more? Okay. Because I tell you, I've saved the best for last, I promise. I mean, it's the best because it's the most essential. It's the defining characteristic of our American experience. It's why we left England. And it involves your vote, the essential component of American citizenship. Well, Ken Paxton is proud about his voter fraud unit, isn't he? And I object, Your Honor, to the phrase voter fraud because, Vicky, he's calling you a fraud. Calling you a fraud, sir. You are a voter fraud. I mean, it's insulting when you think about it. I mean, does anybody in this room, honestly, know anyone who's even said they tried to vote illegally? I mean, it's just never done. I've never had that conversation. It's bizarre. I'm not even sure how you do it or why you do it. Now, look, if he means election fraud, let's have that conversation. In other words, if there's some just pitiful candidate or incumbent who wants it so badly that he or she will break the law just so they can win and stay in office because they got no other plans, well, then throw the book at them. And here's the best part about that. We have the book. We've got the laws. We've got sentencing. We've got enforcement. Ken Paxton, we don't need your voter fraud division. It's just like the freeway out here, you know, Central Expressway. We have speed limits. We have enforcement, DPS, you know, county sheriff. We have fines and sometimes prison. But what the government doesn't do is say, you know, we hear there's people speeding on the Central Expressway, so we're going to shut it down to one lane and nobody go more than 20 miles an hour. Well, that's exactly what they're doing with our vote. We hear there's voter fraud, so you don't get more than one drop box for your ballots. You can't have late night voting for the shift workers. No more drive up voting, for people that have a lot of kids or animals or a disability. It's just really something else. We just want to suppress that vote, all in the name of purity of the ballot box. I mean, it's just such hostile imagery. So why? Why Ken Paxton? Well, just go to his own website. It's actually kind of pitiful. He says 625 successful prosecutions. Well, we have a criminal judge here. I don't even know what that means, successful prosecution. I know what a conviction means, okay? But let's use his numbers. 625 since 2004. Okay, how many votes have there been since 2004? All right, I looked it up. Forget all the local elections in all 254 counties. Forget the primaries like we're facing here in about 3 months. Forget the constitutional referenda like we just did in November. Let's just talk about November general elections every 2 years since 2004. 100 million votes. Let's plug in 625 into 100 million, and it yields a product so annoyingly small that it is less dangerous than the bad stuff we drink in the water every day. So, I contend we don't have a voter fraud problem. We have a Ken Paxton problem. Yeah. So here's my pledge. Here's my final pledge, and then it's back to you. As your next Texas Attorney General, I will take Ken Paxton's voter fraud unit, and I will turn it into General Jaworski's voter access unit, right? Because you ought to be able to call the government if someone is stepping on your voting rights. You get in line at 6:45, but they close the door before reaching you. You ought to be able to call the government. I mean, thank God for the NAACP, LULAC, MALDEF, and the like. They've done God's work over the decades. But if your civil rights and your voting rights are being trod upon, you ought to be able to call the government. Well, you ought to be able to call the government if you sign your name as you do on your application to vote by mail. You sign your name as you do weeks later on the ballot itself. You mail it in, but some busybody at the shop says, well, these signatures don't quite match. I'm throwing this one out. You ought to be able to call the government. If your 18-year-old looks you in the eye and says, Dad, I don't know what you're talking about. When you say, well, dear, did the principal offer registration to the senior class twice this year? Because, that's the law of the state of Texas. Election code 13.046D, as in David, says that every principal, public, private, religious charter must offer registration twice a year to each senior turning 18. Well, my God, can you imagine if every 18-year-old were registered and voted and participated in the most essential element of American citizenship? We'd never lose another election. Well, my goal as Attorney General is to be a transparent, transformative individual in our state government who is not embattled, who will go to college campuses and law school campuses quarterly, who does coffees at the child support offices all across the state to encourage people that their government is not hostile to them. Can you imagine if our 18-year-olders approached this elementary aspect of citizenship, the vote, with the same zeal that they exhibit only 2 years prior when it's time to get the driver's license? It can be done, and it takes leadership at the top, supported by the great Democrats and the great patriots and the great citizens of the state of Texas. I know we're all out there. I know we can do this together. Richardson, thank you for having me. God bless you. I will be back. I'm asking for your vote twice, not like that, like once in the primary and once in the general. I'm Joe Jaworski, and I'm here to serve you. Thank you. My favorite. Q&A. Yeah. We had a deal. All right. Thank you. Perfect. All it takes is one question, and then everyone enjoys. So who's that first person? Right here. Come on. And probably any issue. Okay, so no, it's a great question, and you said you're from the Panhandle, and is your name Angela? Where are you from? Yeah, yeah. Beautiful. So it is important. You know, Democrats have feasted, you know, in the urban areas and in the valley, but rural Texas, we have found, has just loads of yellow dog Democrats that remember the good old days, but they feel like they've been ignored. This campaign took note of that, and when we shifted from Zoom, where I met Jenny, to live appearances, and I think it was May 1st, we did our first one in Bryan College Station. Man, we started hitting East Texas, and we went to West Texas. We haven't done Lubbock, but we have been in the Valley, and we've been in South Texas, not the Valley. And the three issues that I like to talk about are rural health care, like we talked about this evening, because that is a big deal. And, you know, the hospitals are dying on the vine. And with the Medicaid match, especially the way it's discussed, like it's our money coming home, I mean, rural Texan voters of both stripes and independents can get behind that. The second one is cannabis as a cash crop. Look, I didn't even bring that up yet, but I am a cannabis reform candidate. Yeah, absolutely. And when everyone kind of gives me the stink eye on that, I go, now hold on. I said, I mean, not everyone, but I say, do you remember wine? Because if you were intrepid 100 years ago and grew your own grapes to create wine, you'd be going to prison. All right, it was called prohibition. And now I ask anybody to drive 290 from Austin to Fredericksburg, very rural Texas, like 50 wineries, you know, and it's just a cash crop and it's a tourism draw. Cannabis can be the same way. And of course, for all the reasons cannabis is a good idea that go beyond rural Texas. It's, you know, money for the state. It helps veterans and chronic pain sufferers and cancer patients, gives them a alternative to pills. And we can finally fight a winning war against opioid addiction. But the most important reason, and this really is an urban issue, but I got to say it while we're on the topic, is social and criminal justice reform. Jenny, I mean, Richardson, how much longer are we going to incarcerate young adults, and let's be fair, typically young adults of color, for possessing a flower that grows out of the ground, so that we can put them in prisons, increasingly private prisons, so a shareholder can make a profit off their incarceration? Now that is a sick society, and we won't have it. We're better than that. And then finally, I think rural Texas appreciates it when we talk about broadband. And of course, we can thank Joe Biden and Congress for passing that infrastructure bill. And a good general counsel of the state of Texas, the Attorney General, will make sure that the money is spent on human improvement in infrastructure like broadband, because there's a lot of agricultural equipment that works off a signal and gives data via a signal. They need good broadband. Telemedicine, because you don't want to drive 100 miles if you just can take a picture of it and the doctor, I can diagnose that. And then students, who need to sometimes do remote learning. So, those are three big things, the Medicaid match for rural hospitals, cannabis cash crop, and broadband. And local control. How about that one? I mean, I think so. Those are four big issues. Great question, and I think it is a strategy, and we will target them. And it's hard to know exactly who you voted for in a primary, right? I mean, all we know is that they voted in the Republican primary. But I think that my grandfather's legacy, Leon Jaworski, the Watergate special prosecutor, he stands for the rule of law. I mean, honestly, he was a Democrat his whole life, but he was an LBJ John Connally Democrat, not a Ralph Yarborough Democrat. And he was, to be honest with you, Democrats for Nixon in 68 and 72. Because if you remember, LBJ was not happy with Hubert Humphrey. And I think that just kind of rubbed off on the LBJ crowd. I mean, Bobby Kennedy would have been an incredible president, but he was taken from us too soon. And in 72, my grandfather was Democrats for Nixon again because McGovern was too liberal for Texas. And yet, when Alexander Haig called him after the Saturday Night Massacre and said, Leon, your country needs you. And he said, I just can't get involved in that. You'll treat me just like Cox. And he said, what do you need? What guarantees do you need? He went up to D.C., negotiated the right and the power to take this investigation to the highest aspect. They didn't think it was the president, but as it turns out, a man who supported Nixon was the one who caused him to resign in the United States Supreme Court decision, U.S. versus Nixon. I think that integrity, the rule of law, is something that people remember. It is a legacy that I hold very dear, and I want you to know it's still alive today. It's not a big foundation, but my grandfather wrote a book called The Right and the Power, and it was his memoir from Watergate. I mean, everybody wrote one, right? Well, it was a New York Times bestseller in its day. And when the publisher gave him his $250,000 check in 1975, he said, I can't possibly accept this. And they said, what? And he said, I cannot benefit from my public service. Well, his law partners said, Leon, look, you don't have to take it for personal use. Just create a foundation, and you'll figure out a reason to use it. So we did. Now, my dad is the chairman of that foundation, and I'm the vice chairman. And most of the money that it generates every year, it's about $160,000, $180,000 a year, because the endowment's worth more, goes to Baylor Law School. And it funds the Leon Jaworski Scholarship, so that one male and one female every year, on merit and need, get a full ride at law school. Well, here's where it all comes down. I was in Dallas recently at Harriet Earhart's townhome, former state rep, and in the crowd, a young woman walks up and says, I'm working for the district attorney's office in public service, and I was the beneficiary of your grandfather's scholarship. Just amazing 50 years later. Yeah, so the question was, there is a licensing agency called TCOL that is dragging its feet on sort of progressive, if I can use that word, thought on how policemen can be more sensitive in crisis issues. And instead, they seem to be going the other way, which is sort of a more militarized approach, more of a, hostile approach. What would I, as Attorney General, be able to bring to the table? How would I approach that? So first off, this is perhaps where I would draw on my experience as a mediator, right? Now, I don't know that the Texas Attorney General has the authority to tell, the police unions or, the licensing authorities what to do. You certainly are involved in giving legal advice when they ask. But I think that the perception, while it may not be in writing as such, the perception is that the Attorney General is the top cop. We've heard this before. While that's not exactly true, I don't think anybody would resist, to use, for lack of a better word, a summit that could be used to bring the various leadership, CLEAT, TCOL, police unions, community activists and citizens who are often on the bad end of police decisions, and let it be highly publicized. I did this in Galveston in a very controversial issue involving public housing. And, people didn't want to rebuild it, but HUD gave us $1 billion to rebuild Galveston, and they were going to damn well see that public housing was built. And so I was a transformative mayor on that issue, and it didn't all happen overnight. We had to start with town halls and such. So this would be an opportunity, I think, because we have a great intractable crisis right now with confidence in our police, and people are taking sides, and they're really embattled about it. So I would simply say that this could be one of the first 100 days, hold a summit and try and get, leaders literally representing all communities of interest to come together and begin the conversation. Wow. Okay, so the question is greenhouse gas, the crisis, the climate crisis, and I think you're just sort of asking how I feel about it and what I might be able to add. If Democrats really cared about it, wouldn't we be doing more? So let me just say that I do believe the science, and I live in Galveston, Texas, and, the way it appears that our home will be underwater like Venice, given sufficient time. Yet, the conflict is, I grew up in Texas, an oil and gas state. I went to a public university for law school, University of Texas, which, as we know, is subsidized by the Permanent Fund out in West Texas. Who's running for general land office? That there's a big play there. The land commissioner is responsible for those leases. And, I will just say that the Attorney General has initial opportunity to file lawsuits if people are polluting. The Attorney General can support local officials like the great new Harris County Attorney Christian Menifee. If y'all don't know him, look him up, who is suing and using public nuisance laws as the Harris County top lawyer. You can help them. You can file amicus brief. You can really co-partner with them. But I will tell you that the good American way of dealing with this is let somebody make a profit off it. And I'm referring to as carbon capture and other remedies. So I think that's kind of where we need to head. We need to incentivize clean energy, and we've been doing that for a while. We have a lot of wind farms. We need to incentivize the energy companies, because Texas is real good about giving tax breaks and abatements and all that. Well, I read an article recently that a new carbon capture technology is going to be near Freeport to literally be a place where we store carbon emissions. I mean, I think that could be a great game changer in Texas. But I will tell you, as Attorney General, I have the right to sue if I feel like someone is polluting, the water source, or if there's flaring. I mean, that's part of the job. Back when John Hill was Attorney General, he had a real hotshot lawyer who's a good friend of mine, Terry O'Rourke. He's now retired, but they call him El Tigre. So there's a certain strut in protecting the beauty of Texas, in my view, and I think it should come back into fashion. Okay, 2 questions. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think so. Right, Jenny, thank you. The 2 questions are, what's a pledge that might apply to the inhumane policies at the southern border with Mexico? And secondly, what can the Attorney General do to, reverse the ravages of the heartbeat bill? Let me take the last one first, and it'll simply be this. I mean, it's not even a close question in my mind. I mean, mathematically, 6 weeks, really? I mean, look, I know it doesn't say 6 weeks. It's his heartbeat, but every doctor worth his or her license will tell you that, there's an electrical heartbeat detected around 6 weeks before you even know you're pregnant. So that does not work with Roe v. Wade, which says an abortion is a constitutionally protected right up to viability. And over the years, viability has dialed back earlier, but it's still way beyond 6 weeks. So it's just not even close. It's unconstitutional. If that is not resolved by the time I take the oath, I mean, I'll have a duty of candor to the United States Supreme Court or any other court where this thing is pending, and I will say, this Attorney General reverses the position. Get your own lawyer, legislature. I won't defend an unconstitutional law. That's against my oath as an attorney. Look it up, Texas Disciplinary Rule of Professional Conduct 3.01 and 3.03. That's why Ken Paxton is being investigated by the Texas Bar for his frivolous lawsuit he filed for Donald Trump back December. Okay. First question. On the border, look, I mean, this is the one that's going to get us if we don't come up with the right answer, a much more appropriate answer. Let me say this, and this is going to make it sound like I'm some big tough guy, but it's the big elephant in the room is the cartel. What is the Texas Attorney General doing right now about these wild cartels that operate south of the border and come into Texas? Nothing. He's doing nothing. Here's something specific that I could do that he won't, and that is, 1, fund special assistant U.S. attorney positions. The last guy who did this was John Cornyn, and literally all it is that you dedicate some of your $1.1 billion attorney general budget, and that's a biennium budget every 2 years, to fund several special assistant U.S. attorney positions. And these people could be specifically dealing with gun crimes, drug crimes, and cartel crimes on the border. These are the vehicles for all these poor souls that are paying their pitiable life savings just to come to a safer country. Now, look, I got no problem with somebody who has an asylum claim. So here's number 2. We need more judges on the border. We need more representation on the border. So let's go back to not being embattled and quarterly going to the law schools. You can practice law with a 3rd-year license, okay? 3rd-year law school license. I did it in the criminal defense clinic, the death penalty clinic in Austin, and I was working on habeas petitions. You could do the same thing and represent asylum seekers. They are entitled to representation. But also, we need more judges down there so we can rapidly process these. I mean, a lot of these folks are probably fine citizens in the making, but they're being swept into these deplorable conditions and separated from their children and just being treated, in like something you'd see in a third world country, and that's not who we are. Our Constitution actually protects them. Believe it or not, you tell that to a lot of people, they just can't believe it. Oh, well, it's the Constitution. Do you ever bother to read it? And so what I will tell you is special assistant U.S. attorneys get the law students and young attorneys to serve and go down there and help. I mean, it's really very routine work, you know. And then finally, we need more judges, and so that's a funding issue. And frankly, wouldn't it be refreshing to have a responsible attorney general, whether you're on the same ticket as the president or not, who simply will go to Washington and work with them rather than be antagonistic, hostile, and get on Maria Bartiromo and brag about it? That's what we get. Thank you. Okay, I got two. I saw them, and then, yes, sir. Right. So that is a question for the legislature, and certainly I'm not immune from taking a position on something, even if I can't affect it myself, like cannabis. I mean, I can't, wave the law into effect. So on this question, let me start with the people that are released and that, once they finish their probation, parole, whatever, then they're able to vote. I mean, it would be unthinkable with the GOP right now that they would actually send a letter to someone like, you can vote. So that's the difference between us and those other guys, the Republicans. We're the sort of people that'll be like, hey, 18-year-old, you can vote. Do it, right? Hey, former incarcerant, you are done with your service. Congratulations. It is time for you to come back into society. Let's vote. I mean, I would do that. As far as people in prison, I mean, that's such a wide question. There has to be punishment for what people do. But let me offer you this. Cannabis. I talked about legalizing cannabis. I think that if we pass that law and we make recreational possession legal, then it only is fair that for those who are in prison for only possession, they should be immediately released. And if that's all you have on your record, or if you have that distinct, discrete charge on your record, it should be expunged. Thank you. God, I thought you were going to ask, like, how will you cooperate or deal with them if it's just you and them? But that is a dystopian vision. So as I drove here today, sir, and I put it on Twitter because it was just so outrageous, 5 p.m., right on the dot. We were coming up Central Expressway, and there were 12 people with big American flags and a Donald Trump sign, and it said, South Carolina, 1123, the truth will set you free. Supreme Court, is that it? SC, okay, it was Supreme Court on the 23rd. So thank you, because I looked it up, I couldn't get an answer. I thought it must be something going on in South Carolina. And those are the people they're counting on to stay in power, I guess. I mean, so the end game for the Republicans, they could not articulate it if you asked them to. It is simply staying in power. Their end game is so, it's like driving through the fog. You can only see 6 feet ahead of you. That's why we're getting what we get. That's like the poor delivery of services that we're getting. It's the same reason Nixon fell apart. I mean, he was going to destroy McGovern in '72. No question about it. Why? Why did they need to break into the Watergate and rifle through the Democratic headquarters? Because they were paranoid. And these people can't possibly imagine getting a job in the private sector like all of us have been doing successfully to levels of degree. They have to stay in power. So it's not even a question of money. It's not even a question of policy. Honestly, I think it is much more guttural than that. It is like putting your hand in the dirt and just clawing on for dear survival. It's like that. And it doesn't help, was Kendall talking about this earlier, that you can rely on $1 million contributions from the people that certainly are doing it just because they want to see good government, right? So I would just tell you that it's a bad vision. It's a dystopian, authoritarian view. And John Pavlovitz, am I saying his name right? He wrote something that was really moving the other day that said, you know, how are you going to feel on the day that democracy dies? You know, are you going to wish that you had done more? You know, and it was this kind of like requiem. You know, it was like a requiem scene. And then he ends up by saying, hey, here's the good news. It's not too late, but it is 11:59 or something like that. You know, and it was chilling to say the least. So I'm glad you asked that, because it is an ugly truth, the end game. And the end game is unacceptable. The end game is America, democracy has deceased. That's the end game. Why they would want that, I can't answer that. All I know is I'm against it, and I'm willing to fight against it. Well, guys, let's do one more. Mr. John. Let's get rid of the toll roads while we're at it. But seriously, well, I don't know where this came from. John, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's like, well, if you can't afford it with the tax levy, then don't do it, you know? Correct. They're making, I mean, our systemic failures. Correct. So to answer your question, that is, the question is, what about private prisons? You know, I mean, what can be done to eliminate them, I think is what John is saying. There's nothing good about private prisons. And I made the quip, watching on video, I made the quip, while we're at it, let's get rid of toll roads. I mean, the point is this: if something that is traditionally a government element or service can't be afforded by the tax levy, well, then something's wrong. Don't farm it out so that it appears the government has something to do with it, but someone is making a massive profit on it. I would simply say that, again, I'll go back to the cannabis question. I mean, that is a huge amount of our criminal justice experience. It is a pretextual arrest in many cases. And what I will tell you is the conservative estimate done is that $300 million will be saved a year by removing this wasteful, petty prosecution. Private prisons need to go away. Is there one more? I know I hate it. All right, one more, and then we got to go. Yes. A simple one. No, I don't mean to be cute about it. Again, I should add that to my people are dying list, right? So look, the question is, what about open carry? What about the trend toward guns, and more guns? Two comments on this. One, as a political matter, we are a gun state, okay? It's embedded in our lore, and there's a lot of people here that like guns. And I approve of people owning guns. And I think it's wonderful if you're a responsible gun owner. So let me now give you a lawyer analysis of it. Right now, we are perhaps one of the most liberal gun-owning states in the United States, in the nation. And you know what? That's not unconstitutional. Also, it's not unconstitutional to have a well-regulated militia, whatever that means. Well, I think I know what it means. It is not unconstitutional to have reasonable regulations on gun ownership. And so here's my deal. You know, that may not be something that I'm going to lead with. I'd rather do cannabis, okay? But I will say this, as Attorney General, if we get a sane governor who's not fearful, if we get a legislature that wants to actually solve issues and they like people, then I'm going to be an Attorney General that supports that. I'm not going to be some guy that has a gun fetish and says, no, Second Amendment. Because, look, you can have reasonable regulations. Even Antonin Scalia would tell you that. And he did in Heller. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed being with you. Thanks. You guys are for real.
Well, that is to wrap up our part of the evening, but I will say that earlier guys on those they're going to be stopping you at the door, Dallas County, or they'll differentiate. But if you would see signs that on the ballot that helps them out a lot. So thank you so much. Hopefully we'll be able to meet again. You guys like our space. It's nice to have rooms of groups with each other and lots of air and not be out cold. So